Things went downhill from there. The guys arranged the bones while the girl scratched something into the dirt. Their voices were still low, but it sounded like they were chanting in tandem. I don't believe in energy and auras and all that, but at that moment it felt like the entire forest was a giant cold spot. Their voices rose, their chanting continued, and I shat a brick. Then the fire went out. They didn't kick it out or pour water on it. This was instantaneous, like someone snuffing out a candle. The temperature seemed to drop even more. I started shivering and couldn't stop. It felt like my goddamn bones were freezing. I covered my mouth with my hand because I was afraid they would hear my teeth chattering. The last thing I wanted was for these people to know someone was watching them. I listened, and in the pitch blackness I could hear the girl talking. It didn't seem like she was talking to one of the guys, but someone new, as if a new person had just dropped out of the sky. That's when I heard the sound that I will never forget, the sound that's already wormed its way into my nightmares. It was like someone was trying to breathe, but their throat was damaged or slit. It was ragged, loud, and to my ears, inhuman. A sound that echoed through the forest and nearly made me piss myself. If I was scared before, I was nearly catatonic with terror at this point. Never before had I heard such a horrifying noise. At that point my brain and body were screaming at me, "Flight, flight, flight," and I thought it best to comply. Slowly, I turned myself, got into crouching position, and walked as carefully as I could. It was pitch black in this woods, and in my mind if I couldn't see them, they couldn't see me. The chanting had started again, and to my horror those gasping, dying breaths punctuated those chants. I got about 10 yards when I had my cliché moment. I snapped a twig under my foot. Immediately the chants stopped. The breathing noises stopped. I could hear one of the guys say, "What the hell?" Then the breathing, the gasping, the awful cries started. And then, even worse, they got louder. They were moving toward me. It was at this point I went into maximum nope mode. I couldn't run, because I couldn't go 5 feet or so without tripping over a tree or a root. I got out of crouching position and fast walked as fast as my body allowed, feeling ahead of my like a blind guy. I don't think you can imagine how terrifying it is to not be able to run away from something when every fiber of your being tells you to do just that. I kept going. Duck or crawling under fallen trees, as fast as I possibly could. To me, it sounded like the breathing was gaining, but in my terrified state I couldn't be sure. It was at this point the cultish trio finally came to their sense. I looked back and could see them switch on flashlights. My first thought was, that's it for me. I did the only thing I could. The next fallen tree I came, I wedged myself under it, threw some fallen leaves on me, and wedged myself as far into the dirt as I possibly could. I don't think the trio knew which general direction I had gone, because they never really came close to where I was laying. But the breathing persisted. That disgusting, guttural head seemed to be all around me. I felt like vomiting and crying. Once again, I had to hold my hand over my mouth so I wouldn't give away my location. I thought for sure whatever the hell that horrible voice belonged to would eventually find me. Again, hours passed. The breathing persisted. I wanted to see if the flashlights were near me, but I was too scared to sit up. Eventually, the breathing stopped. I had a crash, that is to say I had so much adrenaline pumping through my body moments before that I was exhausted. I surprised myself by going to sleep. When I woke up the sun was shining through the trees. I'm not exaggerating when I say, I was never so fucking happy to see the sun again. No people, no breathing, no nothing. Everything seemed normal. Part of me wanted to go back to the wigwam to investigate, but the logical part of my screamed at me to get the hell out of there. After all, there was the possibility they were watching it. I thought it a bad idea to come out the same way the trio and I came from, the south. Instead I went east and hugged the tree line that borders the lake. I ended up walking around the entire lake. It took me an extra hour, but I felt safe. I even saw a young doe, which for some reason put me at ease. Got around the lake. Walked back to campus, unlocked my bike, and got the hell out of there. I haven't been near the woods since and I don't plan on ever going near them anytime soon. Apologies if my story was long-winded. I'm drunk and tired. Also, I apologize for not having pictures of the actual fort/wigwam. I must have erased them. A bit of background. My father was born in Washington State and moved around a lot, settled in Colorado for like 20 years before starting a family out in California, so we'd go to Washington and Colorado every summer for a few weeks at a time as a family, and drive from one corner to another, and see all sorts of stuff. The vibes I always got hiking/camping/exploring Washington was wonder and safety. The Hoh National Rainforest was magical to a 10-year-old kid. I thought I could live there forever. And then we started going to Colorado when I was in middle school, and that crap was a whole other ballgame. The woods are dense, clustered, claustrophobic, dark, and terrifying. I always felt uncomfortable and watched whenever we set off into the wilds, regardless of what portion of Colorado we were in at the time. I'll green text for the sake of easy reading for the actual stories. Driving through central part of Colorado, spent a decent amount of time around Winter Park, where my dad lived mostly, and the woods surrounding that area. Out on some back roads, Mom and sister passed out, Dad telling me stories and pointing out things. We emerge from some heavily wooded roads and end up in unkempt farmland, grass as tall as I was at the time. All sorts of buildings. Suddenly, we see a barn and several cabins smoldering. Dad pulls over, being the strong, admirable man he is. He tramps into the grass with his Bowie knife to make sure nothing's wrong. Comes back 5 minutes later white as a sheet, holding his knife so hard his knuckles were white. Says not one word, puts the car in drive and slams down on the pedals so hard gravel and dirt spray up everywhere. I ask him repeatedly what's wrong. He says nothing, puts his hand on my shoulder and gives it a big squeeze. He won't answer me when I ask 10 years later, now. Few others to follow. Hiking in woods towards the northern border of Colorado with just my dad, sister and mom had no interest. Thick woods, a little uneasy, but my grizzled old dad is with me clearing a trail so I figure nothing could happen. Trees start pressing in closer and closer, dense undergrowth, tripping and stumbling as my dad trucks on through. Suddenly we break through the veritable wall of greenery into this flattened circular clearing. Nothing in it, it's a decently sized patch of grass. Nothing growing inside the ring besides the short grass. Decent day in terms of weather, but there's mist at about waist height, to me. Dad takes one step into the circle. Removes his foot like he'd just been shocked. Looks at me. This is a man that fought in Vietnam and who knows what else that he hasn't told me about. This man looked terrified. He barrels back the way we came, hefts me up on his shoulder and we never look back. Refuses to tell me what he felt/might have seen. Have a few others. Driving with my family, Mom wanted to stop off at a town called Bonanza. Why not? Never saw the show, wouldn't hurt. Get to Bonanza, I expected a decently sized town, nothing too big or fancy. It's literally a square patch of grass the size of a medium house's first story with 3 buildings on 3 sides of the square. Maybe 5 or 6 big trucks on the square grass area. We see no one walking around, No sign of anyone being anywhere in the houses, but doors are open and windows are unshuttered/open as well. Dad muses about it being a hunter's retreat where people go to drink, hunt and hang out for vacations. We pull up and get out. Parents and sister go one way, I go towards a billboard-like display a bit further away. It's right by a tiny brook bubbling up from the ground. Start reading while parents explore. Start to get closer to the cars, grass, and houses. Turns out this was a mining town with mining shafts all around the area and behind the houses. Something happened. Toxins and radioactive materials seeped into the ground and waterable. People got sick/died and eventually abandoned the town. As soon as I read about the irradiated water, the hair on my arms and neck stands straight up. Look at family, they've just gotten onto the green area. I don't know why, but I engage into panic/familial protection mode, sprint right up to them but stop short of touching the grass. Start waving them back towards me, yelling about radiation and dead people and really scaring my sister and freaking myself out more and more. Dad looks at me, think he's going to say cut that crap out, but nods his head and herds us back to the car. Won't stop panicking until everyone's safely in and buckled up. Dad starts to pull away. I look back and see the curtains move in the attic window of one of the largest houses there. See a hand poke through the curtains and beckon to me. We have never spoken. I spend a lot of time outdoors, and I've only had one truly creepy experience. My friend and myself do a ton of hiking, hunting, fishing, general outdoors stuff. His older brother has a small cabin in upstate New York just outside of Rome, which is surrounded by state game lands. We go up there all the time. Pack up the truck, hitch the trailer with the quads, and go. This happened while we were up there. I'm 22 at the time and my friend is 25. Making a trip up to the cabin in late September to start scouting some game trails and set up stands for the season. Also just to get away and piss off. Pack the truck with food, clothes, ammo, and our guns. Hitch the trailer with a generator and 2 quads. Finally get there after a 6-hour ride. It's about 8 p.m., so it's getting dark out fast, so we get a fire, going crack some beer, and get to unpacking. Cabin is located in the only clearing on the property. Clearing is about 100 yards by 80 yards. While we're unpacking we notice crap is super quiet, which isn't necessarily cause for alarm, it's just strange that it's so quiet it causes me to take notice. Finish unpacking around 10 p.m. and hit the sack around 11 p.m. Now, when I say a small cabin I mean it's a small cabin. About 350 sf total with a loft at both ends and the rafters where the bunks are located. Mine is located directly over the only door to the cabin. I wake up around 4 a.m. and hear something moving around outside. I just lay there and listen for a while, figuring it's either a coon or possum looking for some scraps. But it clearly sounds like it's walking on 2 legs. Typically raccoons make more of a shuffling/rummaging sound. Say screw it and go back to sleep. Wake up the next morning. Don't even recall